Hello, welcome to another installment of Frames of Mind. I'm your host, Georgie Rodriguez. For today's interview, I'm joined with the filmmakers of Who We Love, which is a beautiful film. The movie is an Irish coming of age drama. The movie also explores bullying in schools that young queer people can be subject to. Who We Love is available to stream on Prime Video. Today, I'm joined by director Graham Cantwell, screenwriter Katie McNeice, and actress Amy Hastings. How are you guys doing today?
Very good. And thank you for having us on, Georgie.
Yeah, of course. Just so you guys know, there is a time difference. So for them, it is 9:30 in the morning right now. It's 1:30 here in Irvine, but it's week one. It's all the school craziness. My sleep schedule was pretty terrible because of winter break, anyways. I have an icebreaker question I like to ask everyone. So, my show is called Frames of Mind. What's your favorite frame? Is there a favorite shot from a movie?
Well, I like our cinematographers, the Ray sisters are American. They're two sisters from America, and they did a fantastic job with the film. One of the reasons I brought them over from America was because I wanted to get a different sensibility, a different look to the film, and they did such a good job with it. It's beautiful. And it's kind of like for me when I'm looking at a film and I'm asked a question like this about what's your favorite frame. I'm kind of torn in two directions. One is what's the most beautiful image that we captured, and then the other is what's the most meaningful moment. And I suppose in terms of trying to combine both, there is a moment in the film when our two leads, Simon and Lily, are running down a boardwalk on the River Liffey in Dublin city centre. And it's a moment that's kind of full of joy and full of hope. It's an uplifting moment because they've been through an awful lot. We put the characters through an awful lot in the film, and it's a kind of a high point. And also, it's just a beautiful shot of the city, of the river, and for me, that's the one of the moments that stands out for me.
Do you have like a favorite line you wrote or a favorite page you wrote, Katie?
Oh, do you know, it actually kind of ties into what my answer would have been to your first question, which is the favorite frame, and it's quite close to that boardwalk, but it's a little bit earlier in the film when Lily and Simon are walking across a bridge at night time, and they pause halfway through the bridge, and she finally starts to open up to her friend about what's happened and about coming out, and you've got the beautiful city lights behind her and they've got these beautiful bright clothes on, so it's kind of like, to me it's like an impasse between childhood and adulthood, and it's the first time that she's been situated in these beautiful lights, which is kind of, it belongs to the adult part of the film. And that monologue, the kind of the few lines that she says on the bridge, that was a pickup scene that we had to shoot throughout COVID. I ended up as an extra in the background. I was brutal. I was so crap. But myself and Graham and Clara, we got this opportunity during those pickup scenes to throw the lines around and talk about how they felt to her and how they felt to Simon. And we got to sit together in a way that we didn't really get to do during the main shoot. And so when she talks about looking, it all being so new and about how she wants her privacy to be respected and everything, that to me felt very authentic. And it was one of those moments where, like, Clara walked off the bridge after, and I just happened to be walking beside her. And I remember the two of us looking at each other and having a little moment. And she said that felt like a memory. So I won't quote the entire monologue, but I remember that was one of those moments, like it being my first feature project, where I thought, wow, we really got that right.
That's amazing. And how about for you, Amy? Do you have a favorite frame?
Yeah, I think like Graham said, I'd have two answers. Visually, I really love, the stuff with AJ and Lily, the kind of pink, there's a seduction scene and it's lit with kind of pink diffuse light. And I think visually, I really, really like that. That's one of the official stills is from that scene. So I really like that as a frame. And then I suppose it's for me personally my character storyline with Una. Right at the end of the film, it's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling if I describe it. But it's just two shots, and they were the first two shots we actually filmed in the whole shoot. And it's I walk into a room and I look at Celine, and she stands up and looks at me back, and it's kind of their whole relationship just in two very brief non-verbal looks, and it's just a whole world in that. So I really love the kind of how much subtext is in just those shots. So from a relationship perspective, it would be that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do love like Celine and Una, your character. Like, there's so much history in there, even though there isn't too much like of the on-screen time together, like you said, because you play a very much like I don't want to say like elder queer, but like you're guiding these two like teenagers through their coming out story pretty much, or at least Lily's coming out, and so you're very like strong and like very sure who Unag is, but then once you're around Celine, like she's just like a baby all over again, and it's just so adorable to see like in your performance how you can just kind of like flip that switch and just play both sides of that, because all of a sudden she's not like maybe as confident anymore because she's giddy herself about Celine,
Yeah.
and I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, yeah. I think Una has a lot of like she fronts a lot. So she has a good front, and when she is around those younger characters, she is that more experienced, weathered character. But then it is nice she has her own little subplot with that romantic relationship, and there's, like you said, there's a lot of backstory there. So it was really fun to play with Ali Magur, who plays Celine, on those scenes.
And so I also wanted to ask, what inspired you to create this film? Because it's based on your short Lily, and I believe you guys wrote the feature together. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I had made the short film Lily. It was kind of based on my own experiences growing up as a kid and being bullied, and wanting to talk to younger people, or wanting to create something that might be a conversation starter with young people who were going through something similar. And as I was writing it initially, it was a male character. It was a male character, and a friend of mine, Eamon Farrell, had had similar experiences, had been bullied. He was queer growing up. He had a lot of homophobic bullying, and some of the experiences he endured, I had endured. And it was kind of merging the two of them into a short story that made sense. And then I had been talking to Amy-Joyce about an initiative that's, I think was it Susan Sarandon?
No,
Was
I think
trying
it's
to, no,
Debbie McWilliams, actually the casting
Debbie
director.
McWilliams was talking about it, but she was talking about an initiative in Hollywood where they were trying to get screenwriters to go through their projects and look at every male character and ask, could it be a female character?
Might be the
And if
Gina.
it could, Gina Davis, that's what it was, Gina Davis. That's where I got Susan Sarandon from, Thelma and Louise. But yeah, so the idea was, if there was a male character, could it be female? And if it could be female, make it female. And I looked at the script as it was back then, quite rough, and I said, okay, it could be a female character, and that would open up different possibilities. And it became this short film called Lily, which we made very quickly and very cheaply, and it did very well for us. And off the back of that, I had a lot of responses from young people uh, at home and abroad, where they connected to the material, and a lot of people said it made them feel seen for the first time, and it helped them on their journey dealing with bullying and things like that. So we decided that we would try to create a bigger story, because a feature film could reach out to more people potentially, and connect with more people potentially. So once I started that process, I put a very kind of rough draft together, and then I went looking for a co-writer, because I'm male, in slightly older, and straight, and I needed to have the authenticity. I needed to have a partner who could bring the perspective, the true perspective to it that I needed. And I looked for a very long time, and eventually I found Katie.
Yeah.
So maybe Katie, you want to jump in there and talk about what
Yeah.
Yeah, do you
that
want to take
process
it?
was like when you came on board.
Yeah, it was back in 2018. I got a message from Graham, and I was working for the Irish Film and Television Network when the short was on the circuit. So like I'd interviewed him a few times, about this queer short film that was doing really well, and I'd seen it at different screenings and stuff like that. I actually ushered them onto the red carpet when they were nominated for their IFTA. I was doing the social media at that event, so we'd been kind of ships in the night in a little way. I hadn't really found my feet yet. I was still very young, and I was writing a lot, but I hadn't had anything fully produced yet. You know, so I had my own stack of short films that I was like short scripts that I was putting into competitions and things like that. So I'd won a few awards that way, but ultimately like hadn't really worked yet in terms of having a film actually finished. So when Graham sent me the script, like I thought first off, like this is an amazing opportunity. I can't believe he's asked me. I know exactly who he is and what this film is about. I had things I loved. I had things I thought were kind of halfway there, but not 100% right. And so I gave Graham my absolute blunt force feedback, you know, all the love and all the nitpicking, everything all together. Because I said to myself, you know, if I want to do this, I'm going to do it right. Like, I think we've all watched so many films as queer people growing up, and you can tell either, you know, the script's not been massaged hard enough, or the director and everyone is great, and but they, you know, they settled with a name actor who doesn't know the experience and didn't put the time in. And, you know, when there's an off note, it really it's hurtful, you know, not to be too dramatic about it, but it hurts when you see kind of a lack of authenticity there. So I gave him everything that I thought as you know, as clear as possible, no filter whatsoever, and he took the feedback so well. And so I went through this lovely process of like writing and directing my first short film at the same time as writing my first feature with Graham, and learning a lot from him and putting a lot of that into my own work as well. Like we had to be really disciplined about sending drafts back and forth. Like we don't live in the same county in Ireland, so I would have the draft for a week and do a passive note, and then I'd be hands off and I'd hand it off to Graham. And it took us a while to find a rhythm with that. I think we got there eventually, you know, but it takes a lot of discipline. And when you're kind of learning on the go, like it was the most fun I've ever had writing a script, because usually I write my own. But at the same time, it was really challenging. It was really kind of learn as you go, trust your gut, because you don't, like, when it's your first feature film, you don't really have anything else besides your gut instinct. And I think having the privilege of relying on life experience was great. You know, thank God we weren't writing about assassins or something, because that would have been totally different. You know what I mean? Uh, but it was great, and like he included me so like throughout the whole thing. Like I was invited to set a couple of times, involved in the pickups and things like that, which to be honest, like doesn't often happen with writers as well.
I was actually talking to Katie before we started about how like a lot of the slang was going over my head, but thanks to like the subtitles, they were kind of like translated into a way that I could understand it. But a lot of the queer experiences are universal, and I could understand all of the things that came with that, especially, all of like the bullying you guys cover, or just even like Lily, or well, many of the characters not wanting to come out, or all of the conversations about coming out. And so I think that really just like shines through, like you said, Katie, with like life experiences, and the fact that like this is kind of a universal experience for us. And so I just thought the film was like really beautiful in that way, because it felt very like all encompassing, because it covers like so much, especially for like an hour and a half. That's not super long for a movie when you think about it, and you guys just covered so much. So just kind of wanted to give you guys your flowers on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that we did talk about. We had more stuff in there, and there's always a process when you're making a film of throw as much as you can at it and then whittle away and kind of get down to the essence of it, and only keep the stuff that feels real and relevant, and you don't want to swamp it. And there were elements that I had in there that Katie kind of pointed out would be worthy of their of exploration in and of themselves, but didn't were too weighty to include as just a small part of this bigger project. So there was definitely a lot of back and forth between myself and Katie, and with the actors. Like, we did have from the short film, we had Clara, we had Dean, and we had Amy-Joyce from the short film to bring their voices to it as well. So they were very much a part of that conversation as well.
Another thing that I really enjoyed too was kind of this conversation around like parents, because the parents, they're not perfect, and there's a wide range of reactions from all the different parents we see in this movie. So if you guys can talk a little bit about that, like what was important to you about kind of capturing this wide range of how parents can react to their children's queer experiences and just kind of showing that diversity with that.
Well,
Kate.
it's, I mean, I work with a lot of young people in schools and in youth groups and stuff like that. And, you know, a lot, I think, and maybe Katie, you'd talk about this. I think nowadays it's a bit easier for people to be themselves and to find their identity if they find the right environment and if they find the right kind of tribe, as we put it in the film. But it is definitely tough at home for some people. And we wanted to show the range of experiences. We wanted to show the range of different reactions, as you called it, from the parents. And some of that is coming from experiences that I've had or that people I know have had. And a lot of it came from Katie as well. So maybe Katie would have a bit more insight there.
Yeah, I mean, I think thankfully, like Graham makes a very good point. Like, I'm 34 now, and my experience of coming out was horrendous. I'm estranged from both my parents. Unfortunately, they're not good role models and didn't take it very well. Not just actually, there's something we didn't get to cover in the film is the androgyny side of things. But I mean, even focusing purely on sexuality. Like some people just don't have a good experience. Some people they come out and their parents are like, "So what? I always knew that. That's fine." You know, I mean, you look at a character like what I actually like about the contrast between Lily and Simon is with Simon you can tell immediately, which sometimes goes against him and sometimes is his superpower. With Lily, it's quite the opposite. You know. I think I found it actually very cathartic on a personal level to write Simon's father, in particular the scene in the hospital room where the two of them finally have a frank discussion about like what's going on beneath the surface with his mother not being there. Because I think like particularly in father-son relationships, there's a lot of silence. And the silence is the most hurtful thing ever. I think sometimes you'd be better off saying something hurtful as opposed to being ignored. Because I think emotional neglect and ignoring is a very common response to teenagers coming out. For me, that meant looking at the parental point of view, like trying to empathize with Fran's character, like with the one person that I was most afraid of growing up and didn't want to talk to. But I got a lot out of it actually, I have to say. You know, like I thought like I was in my mid 20s at the time and I just assumed I'd never have kids and I didn't want them and I wouldn't be able for it. And my perspective through doing this film and in my own work has very much changed about that, you know? I think it's really important. You look at someone like Violet, who I always called her the unintentional bully with Graham. And if you look at people who bully other kids in school, that all starts at home. And if you look at there's a very short scene that's, you know, on the surface is quite light and quite funny, where her mum is getting a glass of wine from the fridge, and that looks like it's banter and fun, but really it's not. She's being neglected by her mother, and she's being told that like school is a social competition, you're winning, that's all that matters, you know. I think there's so many layers to bullies, and I think being able to step back, it's very difficult when you are the child on the front of it, whether you're Lily or Simon or whoever it is. But I think having empathy for them, actually, I wish someone had pointed that out to me at that age. I would have found it a lot easier to let go of the anger and to make the choice not to hate back, which I think Lily does toward the end of the film. I think that's something that Graham got really right with the short, and I'm really happy it continued into the feature as well.
Beautifully said. I really enjoyed like you talked about with Simon and his dad, like that relationship. And he has a quote where he says that his mother could tell he was gay from the second he could talk, which by the way, that had me laughing. Like I just love Simon as a character, so I had to like shout that out. Um, and also one of the quotes with like social situations at school being a competition. That's one of the quotes I wanted to bring up to you guys because I thought that was such a good one. Another one of my favorite quotes was by you, Amy, that we all have scars. Some are physical, some are spiritual. You can choose to cover them up, or you can wear them with pride, like battle scars. And I wanted to ask you guys about this, the bringing up the topic of self-harm with queer people, because sadly it's not something that's foreign for people going through what Lily's going through in this movie, and like how important like this conversation was and what the conversations were like to depict that on screen and how you were going to go about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I recall, I think you linked in, there's a really great LGBTQI charity for young people called Belong To, based in Dublin, that we actually filmed all those scenes with Celine, or no, was it? Anyway, Graham linked in with them and had a lot of conversations with them. That scene was actually in the short. And yeah, it was that was Una's sort of entire role in the short, was that long scene where she sort of takes Lily and effectively she sort of nips that in the bud for her, which I think she gives her a perspective that is really at a critical moment where Lily could have gone down this path. And I think with self-harm, it can often escalate. And it's just really good that she had, well, I suppose Simon maybe knew exactly where to bring her. So that's, there's history with the Simon Una relationship and Celine. And, there is this youth group that Celine runs and that Simon has he's currently barred from the premises for misbehavior, but he links Lily in with Una, and through her she's a conduit to Celine. And I think that just showing that support network is really important, that it might not be through the parents or through the school, but it's that finding your tribe and that there are people. I suppose Una's kind of message is talk to someone, find allies, find friends, find a tribe. Just talk to someone, don't suffer in silence, and don't hurt yourself. It's not worth it.
Yeah, and there was like, it was important to me as well, because it was something I've come across an awful lot. Like I said, I work with young people a lot, and I have experience of working with people who self-harm. And one of the things I wanted to do with this film was just depict it in a way that wasn't judgmental, that wasn't pejorative, that wasn't kind of making it out to be an incredibly bad thing, but just acknowledging it and saying it exists, it's real, it's there. Can we talk about it? Can we highlight it, and can we say this is a thing? One of the reasons we made this film, or one of the reasons I wanted to make this film, was to bridge a gap between young and old, to make a film that could be viewed by young people, to give them perspective and to give them hope, and by parents of young queer people, to give them a perspective and to give them an opportunity to talk about these things, using the film as a conduit, using the film as a launch pad for that, to say, okay, we've both watched this film. What do you think about that scene? What do you think about that scene? What do and just to be able to have a conversation that doesn't feel so raw and intimate and personal, but can lead to those spaces, if you know what I mean. So I didn't want to neglect that, because it is such a big part of the experience. And I didn't want to, overly dramatize it. And again, that was a conversation that myself and Katie had as we were working on the script. We were trying to make sure that we did that authentically, but not in a kind of an exploitative way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not glamorize it, but show it. Because I think it's, if I can speak for Lily and Clara's character, I think it's an impulse that she has, because maybe she's full to the brim of this feeling and she has no outlet. And lucky for her, she has Simon who can take her somewhere where she can let that out in a healthier, channel it in a different way.
What was the scene that you found most relatable in this movie? Because for me, I don't want to spoil like who it is, but there's a like someone's googling that like am I bisexual quiz or am I gay quiz, and I started laughing because I remember like searching that up way too many times as a teenager. So to you guys, what was a scene you really related with?
Yeah, for me, there was, I mean, maybe it's not the one I related with most, but the one that always gets me is the scene that you referenced, that Amy-Joyce was talking about, where Una talks to Lily. And she says a lot of things that I wish someone had said to me when I was a kid, coming up, about being yourself and finding your own way to deal with the world, and finding your tribe and finding your allies. And when she says that moment, that line you talked about, we all have scars, something about the delivery from Amy-Joyce, the moment, the reaction from Clara, just the sentiment behind it. I get like the hairs on my arms go up every time I see it. So for me, that would be a kind of a cornerstone moment in the film for me.
How about for you, Amy-Joyce?
I love at the end again. I'm going to be careful not to spoil it, but there's a moment where Lily and Simon go back to school and the music's playing, and you can see that sort of jungle societal, but there's been a shift, there's been an internal shift with Lily where she's owning it, she's stepping into her power, and I really love that, and the way she handles confronting the bullies in the aftermath in the classroom. So for me, that just gets me really yeah, that it's that empowering moment that she steps into her power, and I just feel, well, as you know, I feel job done.
Yeah, I love it. How about for you, Katie?
I think, to be brutally honest, in terms of relatable, there's a horrible scene where Lily's being bullied. Her face is bruised. She's upset. Like, her parents aren't supporting her, and she walks into the classroom in school, and people have done something to her desk. I won't give it away too much, and people laugh at her struggling to cover it up, and she tries to hold it together as the teacher walks into the classroom. I definitely had experiences like that in school, and I actually had a twin sister who would rather just not get involved. So she was actually sitting there watching all this as well and not helping me. I remember feeling completely confronted and hopeless because, unfortunately, with children, everyone wants to belong, right? So again, I don't think the drive is deliberately vindictive, but if someone sees someone else being laughed at and it's easy to join in, that's all children want to do, is join in and band together and find your tribe, even if the tribe isn't behaving very well sometimes. So I remember like reading that in the script and working with Graham to add more layers to it, and feeling like it's important to show that hopelessness. But to end on a slightly more positive note, I think we did offer moments of, which for me, were kind of a gift to the character that I didn't have, like reconciliation, support, friendship. Someone like Simon, as he put it, like following me around like a dog. Every kid needs that. For every day you have where you feel kind of kicked around emotionally in school and at home, especially when that happens, when the two happen at once, like when your family aren't supporting you and then you also go into school and someone doesn't realize you're already on a 5 out of 10 and they take all your resources. To have that one little olive branch from somebody, even if you don't appreciate it in the moment. I'm so happy that despite that unfortunate relatable scene, that we kind of daisy chained it with other things that were much more positive and doable actually as well. It's not unrealistic to think that people could reach out and support each other just because it's not the most popular move maybe in a high school.
So sorry to hear that you went through that, but you guys created a beautiful film that I feel like helped the younger version of me, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of other core people who see it. So thank you guys for creating Who We Love, which again is available to stream on Prime Video.
Thanks, Georgie.
Thank you, Georgie. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.